Okay, today we're going to do the lower half of the smoking robot, water misting robot, whatever you'd like to call it. I've already done videos showing how I assembled the head part. I'll put a link to that down below in case you haven't seen it. But you might as well start by building a foot leg assembly, just like this one. It has a ratchet in the front. Got a little bit of dirt on there. I guess I can leave that for now. Got your heel and your toe. There's a difference. So we have to identify that before we start assembling on this. Now you can see this center is where the ratchet prowl is going to go. And if you use that as your identification point, you can see these two upper holes are shifted further back. So this will be the heel of the foot, and this longer part in the front will be the toe part. And first thing you're going to need to do is cut yourself some, I'm using 3mm brass. You could use 3mm aluminum, or if you really want, you could use 1/8 inch stock of whatever material you want, but you'll probably have to take a drill and just ever so slightly enlarge the holes and everything, because 1/8 inch is just a smidgen bigger than 3mm. But you want the wheels, in the case of what we're going to be doing next, to spin freely on the shaft. If there's any binding at all, it's not going to work. Of course, these are rubber O-rings that are put on there, and being that the ratchet has to engage with these, there is a right and a wrong way. So we already identified that this is the toe section. This is the piece we're going to put in the front of the foot. Let me shove this pin in here, like so. The foot cover is going to hold the pins in place, but as you can see, the way those are angled, that's going to allow the foot to move forward, the ratchet not to grab. But if the foot tries to go backward, it's going to grab on the ratchet. Let's put the ratchet in there so you can see more of what I'm talking about. Again, you need to make sure, especially with the ratchet, that it can move completely freely on the shaft. If it wants to bind at all, things aren't going to work well. Now let's try this. It's been a while since I assembled it. There we go. So if we can get the camera to see in there, you can see how that way it moves free. So that's the foot moving forward. But if the foot tries to move back, then the ratchet prowl digs in and stops everything from moving. Okay, let's put the rear wheel in. It's the same as the front wheel, but since there's no ratchet on the rear, it doesn't matter which way you put it in. It's just a free spinning wheel. Okay. So now we should have rods in the 3 bottom holes like that, and the front one should turn free, and the rear one, the front one should turn free going forward, but lock in reverse, and the rear one should turn like that. Doesn't really matter which piece we do next, but having said that, might as well take this leg linkage piece. And in this case, it goes closer to the heel on this particular build. Just like that. And then we have the leg piece itself. Now you can see on this leg piece, this, which is part of the arm linkage movement, is a piece that you glue on separately. It's got a flat there. So you just put some glue on the bottom of that and push it in till it's aligned with both sides and basically flush with this. Just shove it on back and glue that in. It doesn't matter if you do that now or if you do it later. But since I've already did it because I didn't want gluing time to interfere with this video, so we take this leg part, and what I'm trying to see and stay in camera is when I'm semi-lined up with the hole in the leg. There we go. And there we have it. Now, you've got your foot part, and again, like I say, it's longer in the toe and shorter in the heel, so you know that it's got to go on this way, and you should definitely test fit all these parts, make sure everything can move, and make sure the foot ratchets, which it does. And if you're completely happy with that part of the build, now would be a good time to tack on that foot. I like to put just a little bit of glue just along the front and rear edges. And if you think you might have to take it apart later, then don't use anything like this glue, because this is permanent. Super glue would be fairly permanent, although if you just put a few little dabs on there, you probably could crack it off with a razor blade or something if you had to. There we go. Just kind of center that up. Alright. Now we got the body base part, which the motor slides down into. And in this case we're using the, it's a TT gear motor as you can see, but this is the 1 to 220 ratio. So in other words, the slowest, most powerful one. And once you slide it down in there, just drop in a couple of screws. In my case, I'm using some 1/4 inch long 632 screws, but I'm sure there's a metric screw that's very similar in size to that, maybe 4mm, 3.5, I don't know. Something like that would probably fit right in there. And this actually is the back, and this part that's closest is going to be the front. And the only reason you need to know that is so when you go to put the legs in, you put them in correctly. So knowing that that's the front, and this leg assembly, you can see the toe. You just kind of work this up around like that. And you need to cut yourself a couple brass rods. Well, they don't have to be brass. A couple of 3mm rods if you're using that. I'm not going to shove it all the way through because we need to put the other foot in there next. But the idea of the rod is, again, when the body's on, it'll hold them in place, but cut the rod so it's about as wide as this inside part. You don't want it sticking out or the body won't be able to go down. Now we should be able to grab this leg linkage piece with our next rod here. There we go. And this will be the leg over here that we're going to put on that we just glued, so hopefully the glue has had time to set up so it isn't a big problem. Now I don't know how much of this I'm going to be able to keep in camera while I do it, but I'll try. There we go. I've got the leg linkage part pinned. Now we just need to push the other one all the way through, like so. There. So now we have the two leg parts on there, and at this point you could hook some battery power up. There's no forward or reverse. I mean, it doesn't matter the polarity of the motor in this particular build, and test to make sure everything is running free before you go a whole lot further. In the case of this one, because I've got flashing LEDs in the head and I've got the water misting system, I went ahead and threw a capacitor across the motor just to help maybe clean up any noise that might be generated by the brushes of the motor. So that brings us to the body part. In the body, I've already glued in a 3, in my case, AA battery pack in there, so we wouldn't have to wait for the glue to dry. This door assembly you can see built on some of the other videos. There's an inside part that slides that you put in when you print it, and then the knob you glue on top. So watch some of the other POGOT videos if you want to see how that door assembly is made. Now as far as the arm, I've got this one arm sitting on there, but here's what the deal is. You've got this arm linkage piece, and this slot is going to fit in with that pin which is glued onto this leg part here. And so this is going to go in from the inside like that. Then there's a spacer that goes on like that. Then there's the arm, and in the case of the arm, again, I'm using a short 1/4 inch long 632 screw. And I like to tighten them down pretty much all the way and then back them off. You want this to be able to move without breaking anything. In other words, I'm holding it on the inside, but I can still move the arm. That way we don't have to worry about damaging anything. Now, on the front details, the bow tie part on the top, this is a separate piece which I've just glued on that you 3D print. And the meter piece is a separate piece which I 3D printed and then just glued in place. And in the case of this one, since I didn't have orange filament, I did have black, I just hand painted it. I painted the outside part orange, then went in and just kind of hit with a brush the other parts. If I'd had white, I'd done it in white, but I had silver, so that's what I used. Now this housing has the switch on it. This piece you glue on separately too, because what there is just an opening in the body here, you can see. So once you've mounted the switch to this, in this case I'm using my standard slide switch, which is 19 millimeters between mounting holes. So you glue that on, put the switch in there. That'll allow the switch to fit in. I brought the red wire down from the battery pack, just ran it to the center terminal, then just grabbed another wire off of either one of the terminals, it doesn't matter which one, and ran them up. And I just kind of tacked them to keep them out of the way. I didn't want them getting bound up in anything, and brought it back up to the top. So that means now coming out of the top of the body, I have a wire from the switch, which will be positive when the switch is on, and I still have the negative wire from the battery pack just sitting there. So that has your body part ready. So I guess we could fit that on to this. When we slide the body down, you're going to try and stare down through this large opening to line up the slot in that arm with the slot in these parts. And again, I doubt that I can keep this in camera and do it, but I'll try. Like so, there we go. And then you can stare down in there and you can see that they're lined up in their correct areas. Now, if you don't want to fight the body lifting off and screwing up that arm linkage over and over again, now would be a good time to screw the body on. Now I'm having a hard time seeing my screwdriver. So I'm just using some random little, like number 2 self-tapping screws. A lot of times they're just from junk things that I found at the dollar store, but you can order some online. Maybe you've got something laying around. I'll give you a little closer up view of it if the camera focuses. Just a little screw. You don't want it too long, because if it's too long it's going to go in and hit with the leg linkage parts in there, which you don't want right now. Okay, so now we have our body attached. This arm over here is a little bit looser than what I like. Still feels loose. That's better. So at this point, you could solder these wires onto the can't quite see my red wire, onto the motor, and that way anytime you switch on and off, then the robot's going to be running. Now, one other thing that I did is the red wire from the battery pack that I already talked about, that I took and ran down to the switch. I went ahead and kind of made a break and made a little solder point on that. And the reason I did that is I thought in the case of my robot, you could all be different, I wanted to be able to run power to the misting unit all the time, because the misting unit has its own on-off switch. If you watch the other videos, you know when you push this button once, that'll turn the fogging misting unit on continuously. If you push it a second time, then it goes into that intermittent mode where it sprays and stops and sprays and stops. And if you push it a third time, it turns off. Now I could just wire this up to the switch in the motor, and this would only work if the robot was walking. But I was thinking, might be cool to be able to run the smoking misting action without the robot walking. So I'll be running the power to it all the time, and then only running power to the flashing eyes in the motor when the switch is on. Now I don't know if I'm going to be able to solder all this up while we're on camera. I'm going to try. I think typically what I would rather do is use some heat shrink tubing on these connections. So I don't think I'm going to glue the head down during this part of the video, and I don't want to take the time to dig out my heat shrink tubing and all that stuff. So I'm going to tack this stuff together. We're going to hope things don't short out, or maybe I'll put some temporary tape around them just for the video, and we'll see how things go here. Let's see. 3U up. Heating up my little soldering unit here. Hopefully I've got enough charge in there. I should have made sure about that before. There we go. Then we have a black wire from the fogging unit and a black wire from the LED eyes, and we're going to join all of those. This might be getting to more wire than this little thing can handle. All of those I'm going to connect to one of the terminals of the motor. Again, in this case, on this particular robot, it doesn't matter which terminal because the motor can run in either direction and things will continue to work. Then I'll take the positive from the LED eyes. I really need some solder on that. I've run out of hands. There we go. Let's get that as quick as possible on the other motor terminal, like so. Okay. Temporarily, I believe everything is wired up. Ran all the negatives together, and I could have run all the positives together, but I decided to run power just to the upper headpiece on its own. So let's just do a quick test here to see if the okay, the walking is going and the flashing eyes are going. Now let's put some water. You know, if you don't have an eyedropper, you could use a little funnel or something. The point is, you just kind of want to get the water down in there without getting it all over the place. You only get about half an eyedropper worth, and I found it could hold 5 full eyedroppers. So I'll just put, I guess, the equivalent of about 2 or 3 on there. Let's see if this will work on its own. Oh yeah, there it goes. Now let's go one more push, and that should be intermittent mode. Here's the hat, and it's illuminated up on top. Now what happens if we turn it on? And let's push the button again. There we go. And I initially turned it on, that shut the fogger down, but now we're going again. All right, so there is your quick build video. Compared to some of the others, it's much quicker. And refer back to the head build video and the head demo video. I'll put links to all that stuff down below. The files for this are up on Thingiverse. And again, this one is designed around using that TT motor with the 1:220 gear ratio.